Blog Talk Radio. Welcome to the Dark Matters radio show with the Sorceress Cagliastro, blood sorceress, pioneer, and necromancer in the hands of nine, for a discussion on all topics relating to blood sorcery, necromancy, the science of sorcery, and related work of manipulation of energy. Each week, the Sorceress Cagliastro and Chris Rogostrowski will explore topics designed to reveal what cannot be seen. And tonight's topic is one of our favorites. It's about demons, who and what they are, how they can be incorporated into your life, and more. Tonight, we also have a special guest joining us who has joined us in the past. We're thrilled about it again, Victor Furman. Victor is an interfaith minister, spiritual channel, author, and paranormal investigator who is currently on 2 investigation teams in New York. Join us in the Dark Matters radio show chat room, which is located under the Blog Talk Radio media player for the show. And now, here's the Sorceress Cagliastro and Chris Rogostrowski.
Thank you, Mary. How are you tonight, Mary?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Great, thank you. Chris, welcome. How are you this evening?
Oh, I'm doing great. How's everybody else doing?
Oh, I'm okay. Victor, nice of you to join us for the evening. Thank you. I know that you'll be with us for the duration of the show, because tonight, actually, we're going to have to do an hour show. I'm going to be teaching a class this evening at 10 o'clock, so it would be a great thing if we could go for an hour on this show. The discussion tonight is about demons, and, this is the thing that people ask me about the most. I think maybe aside from necromancy, and necromancy being something that is separate from this issue. The issue of demons, and I say issue of demons because people come to this with a very heavy set of baggage. When people talk about demons, that's a sort of wide berth of what people are actually thinking that might be. And just for the purpose of opening this conversation, let me say that for me, my experience of demons and what they've shown me and told me, and extensive amount of work that I've done with them, is that they are an amalgam of energy that come from a place where there has been either crisis or discomfort, confusion, chaos, this sort of thing, and that they derive from this thing and create a particular energy that seems to develop into its own ability to function. Some of them become more evolved than others, but it seems that their desire, pretty much generally speaking, is to become physical in some way, to have some kind of physicality, some kind of human experience. And that is really my definition of them based on what they've shown me. There are demons, there are attending demons, there are demons of lesser cognitive ability and demons of greater cognitive ability. But pretty much they are erratic, chaotic energy, both good and difficult. I don't really like to use good and bad because that seems to have its own connotation. So that's what we're talking about tonight for an hour. And anybody want to jump in and start a discussion about their own personal experience with demons? I'm open.
I've dealt with them in the past, and you're right. I mean, it is very chaotic energy that you're dealing with. And I think that's part of the problem is people can't get a grasp on that. I think that they have a lot of the baggage, like you said, from all the different religious beliefs out there and everything that says that demons are bad. And then to get near one gives you, if you're not ready for it, it'll kind of upset you a little bit. I know the first time I came into contact, I was kind of like, well, I'm weird to begin with, so it was kind of like, oh, let's poke this and see what happens. And go ahead.
Well, when you say let's poke this and see what happens, what does that mean for you? Because when I deal with demons, I have a very sort of intimate relationship with my attending demons, but other demons cause mad chaos. I mean, they can do everything from create a disturbance in energy to actually create an upsetment in individuals who encounter them. So when you say essentially poking the bear, if you will, what does that mean to you?
Well, I found one, it was in a house, and it was causing issues, and I didn't know what it was. I automatically assumed, which I didn't know any better, that it was disincarnate. And when I dealt with it, it wasn't I found out real quick that no, it wasn't. There was no human side to it, so to speak. And I was like, okay, then I don't know what this is, because it didn't fit my pigeonholing of things at the time. I didn't understand. So the first thing I did was, okay, I don't know what this is, so I got to find out what it is. And I would poke and prod, and it was like, okay, what are you? And when it had enough of me acting like an idiot, it lashed out, and it was kind of the same effect that you get when you stick your finger in an electric socket.
Victor, can I ask you a question about what people think demons are? Because you're an interfaith minister, and you come across people of sort of a wide berth of questions about this thing. See, for me, people come to me when they think they have a demon in their life, or they have an understanding of what it is, or they're just in fear all the time, or they're mislabeled and disincarnate, very much like Chris was saying happens. But what do people, in sort of the general birth of things, think a demon is?
Well, it comes from their foundation in the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And the connotation of a demon is a negative being, sometimes a fallen angel, within the context of the religious belief, something that is absolutely evil, bad, negative, and out to do harm to humans, out to possess humans, out to basically utilize the human form to achieve whatever objective it is that they're looking to achieve. You'll have to forgive me. I'm driving and I'm actually looking for a place to pull over right now. So, and I think I just found one, and now I'll be able to speak coherently, because it's a little difficult for me to be fluent and drive at the same time. Okay. So
well, we appreciate your dedication.
Thank you. That being said, it's really interesting, because your opening remark about demons being an amalgam of energy that's generated by chaos and other disruptions, and then seeking form. If you think about there's energy seeking form, and you think about people having preconceived notions about something, what a better template for those energies to form around the preconceived notion. So consequently, if someone thinks that a demon is a negative entity that's out to possess them, and you have this free-floating energy that's generated by chaos, and this person is putting out this template, well, why not the energy jump on that template and assume the form that this person believes it will be?
That's very well said, and let me just lean on this phrase, assume the form that people believe it will be, because when I talk to people who have demons in their life, demonic energy, this sort of thing going on, they become carriers of fear at the toxic level. And as you know, I have an idea about fear called it doesn't really exist, that it's a moment that we are standing between inconvenience and not knowing what's coming next. And inconvenience, in the true sense of what that is, to be inconvenienced, to be taken out of one's general flow of life, and to deal with that. So people get in this state, this panic fear state. And what that does is it feeds the very energy that they're fearing. Because the fact that they are an amalgam of chaotic energy, energy goes to where energy is. Energy attaches to itself. So what happens is when one is encountering something on a demonic level, one if one stays very still in the moment, the demon loses energy. It's like an animal, a puppy or a kitten that needs constant stimulation. But what people do is they feed into it. They become afraid of it, so they therefore become part of it. And the downside to that, although I'm sure there are many downsides to that, is that most demons are more interested in playing and learning and understanding, and that might feel invasive, but they are not necessarily there to steal from you or to destroy you. There's a very wide berth of them. Victor, when you experience these kinds of things with clients, or you see these kinds of things in houses, and is there any consoling the individuals, because this is something I want to talk about with Chris as well. Is there any consoling the individuals, or is it just get this out of here?
Well, I've had only one experience in that I've been called to that I consider to be demonic. And the situation here was a woman in her late 60s who said that she had some type of an entity that was telling her to do negative things, that was using abusive language with her, and so on and so forth. And when I normally speak to someone and do a telephone interview, and they tell me something of this nature, my first immediate reaction is that there's an emotional component involved. And quite a lot of times there is an emotional component, and these people actually are in desperate need of psychological counseling and therapy. But in this woman's case, she was so cogent and so together in what she was sharing that it didn't sound like that to me. So during the course of the investigation, in which I actually went with two different teams, we found that there was an energy form in her apartment, and it obviously was not just in her apartment. It would go with her wherever she went. So in that sense, there was an attachment. But what I realized after a while was this is something she actually desired. It was not something she wanted to let go because it defined her life. And if someone has an energy experience that's defining their life and they're not willing to let go, they're not going to let go. They're not going to get rid of it.
You know, Victor, I have a moderate fascination with the experience of conjoined twins. And the reason that I do is because I don't think that there's any manner of language in which they can explain their experience to those of us who are not conjoined twins. I just think that they live a life so completely different than anything we can imagine that there is no way to explain it to us. So when you said that she was attached to it and it was defining her, this is something that you hear occasionally amongst people who can live separately and choose not to. And it's a brilliant point because I find that clients who have demons are, some of them, of course, come to me and say, whatever this is, get it out of my life. I don't want to deal with it anymore. But maybe because of who I am and because of what I do, other kinds of people gravitate towards me, and they say things like, how can I use this? How can I develop a relationship with this? Is this perhaps an attending demon? And I don't know that yet. So people have all manner of ways in which they interpret that which is around them when it comes to me. So I think, mattering on who we are in the work, people come to us for different reasons. Mary, did you have an experience you wanted to talk about? You and I talked about something a couple of days ago that I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I just, when my father was home in hospice care, my mother and I were taking care of him, and we were having a rough night with him one night, and she said to me, listen, I'm getting out of this room, the bedroom. I'm going to go sleep in the other room. Could you sleep here with Dad, just make sure he's okay? And I said, yeah, sure. So I was lying down next to him, and all of a sudden there was all this activity in the room. The blinds started going, the radio was going on and off, and I could feel this pressure on my back kind of pushing at me, and I could feel someone or something at my lower back. And it wasn't my ancestors. I knew there was folks that were hanging around, the disincarnate were hanging around checking on things. This was something completely different. And I remember lying there being exhausted, and I said out loud, I don't have time for this tonight. I don't know what you think you're doing, but you are not getting in. I don't care what you think's going on in this room, but back off because I can't even deal with you right now. And things like slowed down and stopped. It was interesting, but there was a ton of activity that just hit the room all of a sudden.
Well, this is where strength overtakes fear. And, you and I had talked about this, and the lower back, the back in general, is a place in which demons seem to enter us. And they do have a physicality, and they are interested in electricity. And, our spinal column being a conduit in that way, I think is very attractive to them. And I think that's why they tend to try and get in that way or to seep into our body. Or perhaps they understand that visibility is limited from behind us. So they try to circumvent being caught, and they use that particular access point when they enter our body because demons want to have a physicality. So they want possession is constant, it's fluid. They walk in and out of people. I sometimes think when people do insane things, when they go on rampages, that perhaps for a moment they were experiencing that. Not all of them, but, those that suddenly do things, it certainly does happen. So in your story, you said something very interesting. You said you knew there were ancestors around and you knew that it wasn't them. How did you know the difference?
Well, I could see my ancestors just kind of hanging out against the walls. They weren't making a lot of noise. They were just kind of being in the room, just kind of watching things. This was definitely a different energy where there was a lot of movement. There was, like I said, the blinds started getting touched, and the radio was going on and off, on and off. Mm-hmm. And I said, this isn't them. This is, the energy just felt like a heightened energy, where my ancestors were just kind of hanging out, watching stuff. Very different energies.
It is a very different energy. Chris, what do you have to say about knowing the moment between whether it's a disincarnate or a demon activity in an individual's experience?
Well, what I've found, and I tell people this too, usually if it's like a disincarnate or that has a bad attitude, especially, if it needs to get a point across, I found that they're a lot more verbal than what a demon would be. They express their need, like they would a human, like you and I would talk. I mean, we can express ourselves and tell, you pissed me off. I don't like this. We can get our point across, where a demon is a little bit more willy-nilly and it's not as focused. Like Mary said, the radio's going on and off, and the blinds are flying back and forth, and all this going on. I mean, that is very chaotic. That is that's more like a hand grenade than using a laser sight.
So
and I found
the
that
situation where an angry disincarnate appears, you're describing as clearly different than a demonic experience.
Yes.
Ability to communicate. I agree with you, because the disincarnate were alive. They were living people, and they understand what their actions will do to us when they appear. They get used to the moment of startle that living people express, but they learn to get past that. Demons don't have any understanding of that. They enter the room like a feral creature, and they just want to experience. They are like people who need constant stimulation or constant tactile experiences to survive. Without movement, think of a tornado. Without movement, it dies. And there is a certain essence of that when it comes to demons at both ends of the extreme. Demons who are, let me just use the term young, by which I mean underdeveloped, all the way up to attending demons who are cognitive and have conversations and can touch, which is what I experience with my attending demons. So all of them have this sort of need, no matter how advanced they are, to touch and to communicate, to make their needs known. And, the concept of inhabitation and possession will come up, and there's no way to talk about demons and not talk about that. But I find that sometimes people think that they have demons, and Victor's point was very well taken. Victor, when you come across someone, do you first try to make sure that they're not experiencing mental illness or anxiety?
Yes, that's correct.
So how do you, once you discover that perhaps they do have a demon involved in their life, do you handle that yourself, or is that something that you go to others to handle?
Actually, in this situation, I brought two other teams in. I brought, Chris George, our friend Chris George.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I brought him in, and he found it very challenging. And he is someone who does a lot of this work and virtually never has a problem. But when it was over and he was frustrated by it, I said, Chris, she's not willing to let this thing go. And he finally realized that. And that's, if someone's not willing to do the work themselves, then no one's going to be able to help them if someone wants to retain that energy. But what was really interesting about this experience for me, and that was the only what I would call demonic experience that I've ever encountered so far, that I'm conscious of anyway, was twofold. Number one, this woman did not know my last name. She just knew me as Victor. In the initial investigation, we did an EVP session, and the recording clearly says, you hear the expression, it's Furman, which is my last name, and this woman had no idea of my last name. So this thing picked up on my name and said it on the recorder. The other thing is I asked her if she ever saw it. I said, did it look like a person? Did it take on a form? And she said to her it looked like a triangle of light. And a few photographs were taken of me trying to get in touch with this being. And there's one photograph of me sitting on this woman's couch, and directly above my head appears to be a delta shape balls of light, approximately 7 balls of light in a delta form or a triangular form. So we got confirmation of what she said she was seeing. So that was my most demonstrative experience of that type of thing. And like I said, I've never encountered anything else that I would consider to be a non-disincarnate.
You know, there's one thing that I want to add to that. When you said that if the person doesn't want to let go, there's nothing you can do. I think that it is more complicated if the person doesn't want to let go. But I think that with specific techniques, you can get in there and break it away. The question is, you know, is it on the moral compass to do so? But I think that if you think about what demons are, and they are an energy that the individual who's standing in front of you was not born with, then directional sorcery, utilizing the boxes and other matters of sorcery that and people are working with, can physically separate that energy out in a way that is very specific. What's done is to reach into the energy of the living human being and take that which they were not born with away and move it outside of them so they can see it and deal with it, or move it outside of them so they can survive. This is a very specific technique. We use something called the iron ring. I teach people how to do the iron ring and to take the energy of the demon outside of the ring, to close the ring down and to allow the person to be inside of the ring with the person working the demon free from that energy. Now, this is not a magic circle. I want to be very clear. The iron ring evolves around us like a gyroscope and becomes more like an iron ball. But it can be done. But the question always comes up, does the person absolutely want to let it go? And when they don't, then that might actually wind up being an attending demon. Mary, is there a question or two in the chat room that has anything to do with what we're talking about?
Yeah, because one of the folks asked, I believe it was Chad, he was saying, could demons be our friends and not so much, adversaries, in that sense of, well, when I was talking about earlier getting pushed on, I think there's, attending demons that are out there that are more, quote, our friends. So I think that's something that, the chat room would like to explore.
Well, I want to talk about that, and I'd like to get Chris's views on that. Without my attending demons, I would probably have been crushed in this work quite some time ago. My attending demons are virulent. They are my guardians. They are my bodyguards. They stand between me and chaos in a majestic way. 9 being the main one, which is why I call myself in the hands of 9, because if I was not in the hands of 9, I would not be here talking about this work. He commands the 8 below him. They came numbered that way. I did not choose them. I did not develop or create them. They were there. He explained them to me, and there are 4 others who I don't talk about as much. 9 is sort of the main guy, if you will. He steps between me and the disincarnate when they are enraged or coming at me in numbers that are too great for me to function under. He deals with other people's anger or sorcery when it comes to my work. He steps in between everything. I could not imagine functioning at the level that I do and the skill set that I have if it were not for 9. So, yes, they can absolutely be on our side. They can be our friends. They do have to get paid, and deals are made. They require a certain amount of physicality. They require a certain amount of whatever it is that they feel will bring them from where they are now to closer to where they desire being. So not only are they our friends, for some of us, they are a requirement, the greatest thing that can happen to us. And I find that without them, I cannot imagine functioning on a day-to-day basis. Just today, I was driving in the car with my daughter, and 9 mentioned something I should do in that moment, which I would not have even thought to do. I didn't even know it was in the way of what we were trying to accomplish. And I picked up the phone and made that phone call based on his recommendation of what he was looking at in the chaos of my world, and sorted something out. What do you think about that, Mary?
Well, I think that demons are definitely, I don't think the media has helped us in a lot of regards, especially with a lot of things that have to do with sorcery and necromancy. So I think that being able to sit and find yourself in a space where you can work with them, and like you said, they have to get paid, I think it's just so important. And I wanted to mention, the book that you wrote, 26 Demons 2 is out I know you revised it. I didn't know if you wanted to talk about that, because that's really, taking classes with you and reading that book helped me not be so afraid, because I think what I had seen from what people had talked about and getting in possession and all kinds of craziness that I had known before, you kind of are a little hesitant to approach a demon to work with them.
Well, 26 demons, thank you, and I appreciate that, because I do want to just mention it, and then I want to jump over to Chris. But 26 Demons Revisited was a more expanded version of the original book, because when I wrote the original book, people wanted to know what my personal experiences were with those 26 demons. I chose those 26 demons over 10 years of observation because they were the ones that presented to me in a way with a formula. Each one of them had something that they required so that they would enter the experience. In other words, they made summoning very simple. So they are also extraordinarily varied in their manners. Some of them are sort of wispy and almost there and can participate on some level. Some of them can bring with them a very particular thing, even physical things. So those 26 demons are a very useful place to start when dealing with demons, because I've given extraordinarily clear instructions as to what they desire and what is important to them. And I've also given instructions on how to shut it down and walk away from it in the end. And this is what's very, very important. If you look at ancient grimoires, you won't find that kind of thing. And they're not the only demons I've dealt with, but they are the ones with whom I have relationships. One of them, more so than the other, is Pitcher John, who I think, I joke that he secretly wants to be attending, but he just thinks he's bigger than 9, and that's not going to happen. So he brings with him bees, physical bees sometimes. Sometimes it's just buzzing, and sometimes you'll be sitting in a room and he'll feel somebody has antagonized me or antagonized the situation, and you will start to see bees appear in the room. There have been many, many witnesses to that. So if demons are something that you're particularly interested in, 26 Demons Revisited is the way to go. It is a very thorough manual offering a wide range of demons who are interested in being summoned, because they haven't been in print for 1,000 years, so they are still interested in having people summon them. So that's a good way to go. Chris, is there and you can get it on Amazon if you want. It's 26 Demons Revisited. Chris, tell us about the demons that are sort of regulars in your life, or if there are friendly ones or useful ones for you right now.
I have one that's followed me around for years. I don't exactly know where I picked it up, but I have my suspicions. I think I picked it up when I was in the service. The more I think about it, because I had an experience one time, and it wasn't, alcohol-induced, which is a surprise, where I was sleeping, and there was actually 2 that came into the room, a tall one and a short one. And they've kind of stuck around. I'm assuming the tall one is female, because that's the one that seems to hang around me the most. And she's very jealous. People have told me about being in various vehicles that I've had in the front seat and felt like somebody was sitting on them.
That's
she's
probably
also
a woman.
Yeah, and she's also the one that hides my keys. And I found the one time I couldn't find my car keys, and I was livid because I was in a hurry. I was late for work. In my mind, I was late for work, which means, I always get there half an hour early. So I would have got there, a whole 20 minutes early. And I was driving to work, and we had a whole lot of rain the week before, and just as I was getting ready to go up this one road that I always took, a tree fell over. If I would have been 30 seconds later or 30 seconds earlier, the tree would have fell on my truck.
Yeah, she's very possessive and protective of you.
Yeah.
You and I talked about her briefly once before, and it was like I could feel her in the room. People come to me to do that, and one of the things that I'm glad you brought her up tonight. I was going to ask you if you wanted to, but because it's private, but she's always been there for you for quite some time, and it is a very strong female energy. Yeah, she probably saved your life that night.
I keep them at a distance, and I don't want to sound rude when I say it, but sometimes there has to be a working relationship. It's like when I was working and I was a supervisor, it's like I had people that were underneath me, and I would take care of them, do what I had to do. If they needed something, I'd see that they got off work. If they needed to, if they, the kids were sick, if you needed some overtime for bills, I'd see what I could do, things like that. But I wasn't your drinking buddy. I was your boss.
Right. Sure.
It's like I kind of... Go ahead.
That works well with you. That works very well with demons if you make that arrangement.
And that's how I do it. It's like, okay, this is what we need. This is what we got to do. This is what I expect, and this is what I will do for you in return. I'm not your buddy. I'm not your friend. I know you have something that you want, and I have something I want. We're going to work out a deal.
Once I was driving somewhere. I was in the South. I was with my daughter in the car, and it was a very, very dark road, a very sort of rural, unlit kind of area. And I did not know the area. And we're driving, and we start talking about something that we both kind of, not emotional about, but something that we both thought took very seriously. And I discovered that during that period of time, I had kind of lost track of where I was going. And I really had no idea where I was. It was very woodsy. There was no lights. And, of course, in areas like that, GPS is a fairly useless thing to have. And 9 came into the car and said, 36, 36, 36. And I said to him, I don't know what that means. Could you just do me the favor of giving me the whole sentence? And he kept saying, I am, 36, 36. And, I said to him, this is a problem with you. I would love to hear. He said, stop, 36, 36. I looked at the odometer, and I was going about 39 miles an hour. And I slowed down to 36. And after a solid 10 or 12 seconds in 36, an enormous deer ran across the road. And if I had been going 39, it would have hit the car. So I knew exactly what he meant by 36 at that moment.
Very interesting, if I can just jump in. I'm going to have to obviously do some work with you to find out more about this. But I think that my sense is I have an attending based on the discussion that you and Chris were just having, because there's been a number of instances in my life when I was in harm's way, and without me consciously doing anything, I was steered around harm's way. One example, I was on a highway once doing about 60. Everything was clear, and all of a sudden, something grabbed my hands and grabbed the wheel and put me into the lane to the right. And within a second, there was a multiple car accident in the lane that I was just in. And it was not my conscious act of doing that. So obviously I had intervention on my behalf, and I have to really examine this now that you folks are having this discussion.
Victor, I'd love to have that discussion with you, privately or on the air, however you want to, because I feel very strongly that you do have an attending demon, and that is, for you, some kind of evidence there that has happened, that you've had that experience.
Yeah.
You are an extraordinary man, and there's a sense that, anyone who gets to know you knows that you bring both peace and strength. And this is an extraordinary combination.
So
I would imagine. What was that? See, I can't imagine what that was. Anybody else hear that?
Yeah, there's some other talking going on.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, what happens every time I do a class on demons, Mary? What happens? Isn't this exactly what
there
happens?
There is some interruption, yes. There is some interruption.
Yeah, so here we are again. I'd love to hear that in the playback. I'm curious. It sounds like she to me, by the way. It sounds like she is talking to me. And she's
I also have a question based on Chris's attending, where he says the woman, the feminine demon attending, or woman with demon attending. I'd like to get your take on what has traditionally. I hear more voices again. You guys are hearing that?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'd like to get your take, all of you, your take on what has been historically referred to as incubus and succubus, or male and female demons that have engaged sexually with people. and whether or not this is an actual manifestation of something demonic or this is something else.
Chris, you want to take that first or second? Where do you find one? It's funny. Chris, do you want to talk about that, or do you want me to take that?
I haven't found any yet. I'm open for suggestions, though, and if anybody would get a number, I would gladly call and research.
Victor, not to go too far out of, not that there's anything about my life that isn't at this point fairly transparent, but I will tell you that when you make agreements with attending demons, especially long-term attending demons, there is definitely a sexual component to the experience, most definitely. I know very few people who have lifelong attending demons in the way that I do, structured on this level. I know 3 people like this who I would say have demons in their lives that participate with them on every level. And I will tell you that the idea of the incubus or the succubus, that which comes and takes from you sexually, is not necessarily the only scenario. These things can be much more mutual and can have a sense of agreement, of adult relationship to them. And this is because the difference between the disincarnate and demons is disincarnate know what sexuality is. To demons, you might as well be holding hands, drinking a glass of water, or walking up and down the stairs. It's just something else. And they want to experience any kind of physicality that they can, this one being particularly intriguing to them because it ordinarily involves more than one person. Did that help at all?
Thank you. Yes, absolutely.
You see, I understand what you're saying. I have a problem with the Judeo-Christian version of it.
Oh, I have a problem with the Judeo-Christian version of everything.
That it just comes in the middle of the night, jumps your bones, and goes to hell home. It's like, well, I've seen dates like that, but I haven't had that experience as far as anything supernatural.
Chris, it's like when you don't pay them for what they do, you pay them to go home, right? Isn't that how that works?
Yeah, it's like make a sandwich on your way out. Here's cab money. I don't.
Wow. Well, your demons take cabs, mine walk. I want to know about your demons.
But you know what I mean? It's like, I understand when you make a deal and this is what you're getting in return. But as far as the stories of it just coming in the middle of the night and jumping on you, it's like, I think somebody's got a little bit of repressed feelings there somewhere along the line.
Yeah, I think so too. Mary, you have any questions in the chat room that we might find interesting?
Yeah. One of the questions that came up when we were talking about the book was the 26 Demons revised book. Does it follow the same sort of outdated practices and rituals of the Goetia? The person said, I have a great amount of respect for the Grimoire, but it just really isn't practical these days. So I didn't know if you wanted to talk about that a little. Mm-hmm.
I do want to talk about that because 26 Demons does not require that you get an army of 10,000 kings or anything like that. I have a great deal of respect for the Goetia as well, and a great deal of respect for the demons in the Goetia that still exist. I have a very strong opinion that a number of them have evolved into physicality, which is what they choose to do, which is why people say, I've tried, and they cannot raise that particular demon. My feeling is that many of them are no longer available in that form to be raised. I'm not really sure what the original intention of the Goetia was because it is an impossible formula to follow. And I don't know if it was a thought process and the desire was that one thought through those things and made them happen because it's not really possible to create what's necessary according to the Goetia. And that sort of thing goes to the structure of high magic and high ritual magic, something else that I feel gets very much in the way of the actual productivity of the process. So 26 Demons Revisited offers you workings of how to summon 26 particular demons who cover a very broad spectrum of everything from healing to creating a broader ability for you to do sorcery, to revenge, to acceptance, to, endless things. You'll read the book and you'll find one that will suit what it is that you're looking for. But there's one that we talk about a lot, which is one that comes in a canine form and comes with a very specific group of things that entice this individual, riverfish, crushed beetles, this kind of thing, which I discovered after years of trying to coax him and getting him into a place where I could repeat that action. Everything in 26 Demons has been done hundreds of times, by myself, by others who have tried it. They are completely accessible demons. The formulas are simple because that's what they've expressed to me, which is why I chose them for the book. There are demons that require a larger, let's just say a broader scope of things that one must do to get them into their space to create a summoning. Some of them require a lifestyle change. The demons in 26 Demons Revisited are not those demons. These are demons that require that you perform certain tasks or leave certain things out on a regular basis in your house. One of them requires a box of particular types of metals and toys and things to play with because he's quite tactile. So if you're looking for a way to bring in demons that you have not, and you don't really have the experience of that thing, there's two things you can do. You can study with me and take a class on it, or you could get that book, or you could do both of those things. And, people who have the book write me letters all the time, and I'm always answering questions. So that, I think, is the difference between the Goetia and this very accessible, very modern version of how to deal with these particular demons. Chris, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, you said about a canine, and that made me think. There's a black dog, and I know that sounds very cliche, but every time I lost the dog, I had the dog that was going to pass go out. We've gone out for a walk, and there has always been a black dog that came up to us and would go nose to nose with my dog. And it happened with all my golden retrievers. It happened with my Belgian sheepdog. Every one of them, when I took them out that night before they passed or they got extremely sick, we always encountered a black dog out by itself, no collar, no chain, no nothing. It looked basically like a black lab, and it would come up and look at my dog, and then it would go away. And especially my Belgian, she was horrible with other dogs, and she didn't even flinch when that dog came up to her.
So, Chris,
and
what do you think was the mission? What do you think was going on there?
I think it was. I know it sounds weird, but like their version of the Grim Reaper, I guess. It
the
was
Grim Barker, Chris, huh?
Yeah.
The Grim Barker. Chris, you're gonna have to go further. Chris, you're gonna have to go further to get too weird on this show. You're gonna have to go further. I'm sorry. You said this is kind of weird.
I don't think I was supposed to see it. I think I saw something that I wasn't supposed to see. That it was for them to see and not for me.
That's quite relevant.
Normally humans don't see that kind of thing, and it did its thing and didn't pay me any mind. And I'm thinking...
Chris, the black dog thing is interesting. It's very interesting because a lot of people have that experience. Maybe not as profoundly or clearly as you have had, but this is a not uncommon thing. There's a lot of mythology on it. It's like when you hear that the dragons appeared in 5 different continents at the same 150-year space of time in the beginning of where illustrations and drawings and carvings of dragons started. I mean, this is something that has happened because it's hit the human consciousness, probably first and foremost in the visual way. So there's got to be some kind of connection here. When I was very young, I thought for years that we had 2 black dogs. And not till I was in school, maybe 7 or 8, did I discover that other people who had dogs fed them, and we didn't. And I kept saying, who's feeding the dogs? Who's feeding the dogs? And someone that I grew up with had a very, very bad respiratory problem, so we didn't have any furry animals. And I kept saying, yes, we do. We have these 2 dogs. This went on for a very long time. What those dogs transformed into is 2 of the 9 attending demons, 1 through 9. And their communication with me was that was how they thought as a young person I could tolerate them. So I think that this is a more common thing than people talk about.
Sorceress, are there in fact demons or attending demons who help the disincarnate cross?
Well, I think that you'd have to define for me, Victor, what cross means. My understanding of... Go ahead.
Leave the body.
Oh, yes. There are demons that will put energy into that experience because they are selfish and they want to experience death. So when they see that already happening, because they won't go so much and start that kind of experience, but when they see somebody transitioning and having that experience, they will want to be part of it. So they'll put their energy in it. That's how they are. They like to cling on to any kind of human experience. Now, let me add to that comes from both extremes. Demons who are new or young, and that doesn't necessarily have a time attached to it. It doesn't mean they've been around 3 months or 30 years. They could be 10,000 years old and still be young in their development. They will go at something like that with quite a bit of chaos and want to feel it and touch it and be part of it. Attending demons can be called to, or demons of a higher cognitive ability can be called to the situation to aid to move things forward with somebody who's struggling with that transition. So, they can be beneficial in that way because there are people who are afraid to go, they don't want to leave their families, this kind of thing, and they can be very useful in that sort of transition.
Thank you.
Oh, sure. Mary, anything from the chat room?
Actually, Darren just typed in a question. Can demons be created by raising a specific spectrum of chaotic energy, or do they already all exist and are just attracted to a specific energy which matches theirs?
That's a great question. Whether all of anything exists or not, I don't know. I can tell you that I have not seen an experience where one forms a demon. I have seen experiences, and I've been part of and created experiences where I've raised a lot of chaos, which has brought random demons, and to which they have become further developed from the energy that I've brought to this particular moment. What I don't know, and I'm very good at saying what I don't know, is whether they all existed before that moment. So I don't know if in the experience of creating an energy or a chaos that can bring demons to me in that moment, demons are other than my attending demons. What I don't know is if some of them were created from that moment. Now, I have seen horrific accidents where I see things come out of that, which looks to me like very new demons or newly formed pockets of energy from that chaos that I do think were not there prior to that moment. That came out of, the loss of lives. A lot of this came out of 9/11. I was down there quite a bit when it first happened. We lived in New York, and I saw things rise that I did not expect to see sort of come from that moment in that kind of clarity. So I'm sure they don't all exist, or at least I think they don't all exist. I don't know that all of anything exists yet, and they are regularly created. And I think that as we move forward in chaos and in the energy of technology, that there are more and more of them, which are why there are more now than there were, or it probably feels like there are more now than there were at previous times in history. It's a great question, and I think we should do some experiments and find out. Anybody have anything to add to that?
I would think that we're set up to get more demons just for all the chaos that's going on in the world. with the wars and with the turmoil in the government and things like that, that has got to be causing some kind of major disturbances.
Well, what about technology? Because if demons run close to energy, if they enjoy being around more electricity, then why would that? I think that would create a situation where they are honing up in that way. I think that they are attracted to technology.
It could be.
Well,
I mean, I wouldn't see why they wouldn't be, because, like you said, they would feed off of that. But like I said, you take into consideration all the chaos, and there's technology that's surrounding the chaos. We have more technology on the battlefield than what we ever did.
Right.
And it's got to be powered by something between all the engines that are running the equipment and all the communication devices and everything that they use as far as drones and planes and things like that. There has got to be something coming out of that.
It might very well affect the frequency. And by frequency, I mean both the energy and the amount of individuals which come into the playing field. I don't know that there's more chaos in humanity now than there used to be. I just know that there are more of us. And if each and every one of us produces energy, then there's more energy to be had. And when there's more energy to be had, then there's more demons drawn to the pot. Also, the more human beings there are that die in tragic ways or create an exit that is somewhat chaotic, the more demons come from that. I'm finding that more and more people call me about possession, especially even in young people. So, I think it is growing. Mary, do you have a question in the chat room?
Yeah, GSA actually asked a question. I know, quote, I know that there are things along the lines of created demons, i.e. tulpas, fetches, servitors, etc. And I know that fetches that don't have a time restraint placed can become fidgety and get chaotic. So could those become demons is the question.
Could what become demons? I didn't hear that part.
Just like, fetches that where I'm not familiar with created demons, but this is what he's asking about, is that if they don't have a time restraint placed, can they get fidgety and become chaotic? So can that chaos create a demon?
Yeah, of course it can. They are amalgams. Energy happens, chaos occurs, and it sits around, and more of it occurs and sits around, and it becomes too heavy to be free-floating, and so it becomes something. That's my understanding of how they're created. They can come from any source. They can come from, I use the word chaos as opposed to negative, because a whole group of people can perish in a moment, and there's chaos, and it's a horrible thing. Or, a huge amount of energy can come shooting out of something, and it's chaos, but it's just energy, and that is not really affecting anyone, and they can come from that. So when I say chaos, I just mean large quantities of unexpected energy. So, of course, they could come from any of those sources. And when they do, I don't know that they're that different from one another until they have experiences. This is something I just wanted to mention. They are amalgams of energy, but they are then formed by what is around them that they want to participate in. If something wants to become physical, then it must be amongst that which is physical to learn how to be physical. And if they are amongst individuals who exude a lot of chaos, then they become that. If they're amongst individuals who don't, then they don't. So they are definitely, yes.
That would tend to include the natural energy sources such as geothermal, I can't even think of the word I'm looking for right now, but like earthquakes, volcanoes, and also solar activity and interplanetary activity.
Of course. Yeah, that's why I use the word chaos and not necessarily negative energy. I mean, negative energy in terms of how the human mind processes pain and discomfort and all that certainly produces demons, but chaos in general does. They're fed by electricity. The more energy they get, the bigger they get, the stronger they get, the thicker they get, denser that they get, and by this I mean they start to take up space. And the more erratic energy sources that are occurring, we have nuclear devices. We didn't have that a couple hundred years ago. that's creating its own sense of very pervasive, chaotic energy. Who knows what's coming from that? I don't have an opportunity to experiment with nuclear devices, but I can certainly see where they would create a kind of birth of energy, if you will, pushing through that which already exists and creating a new form. So, sure, all of those things are creating something. The shifting of plates, these kinds of large, dynamic, geological experiences, all of these things can release a chaotic energy that can become an amalgam and create an entity, a form that comes from those experiences. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I know we're only going to go to 9 o'clock tonight, but I just want to take a minute to talk about one of the rooms that we're going to have in Cagliastro Studio. It's something called the Black Room. And the website for this will be up very soon. It's sort of up now, but I'm still toying with it, so it's not public yet. We're going to have something called the Black Room, a room dedicated specifically to the working of demons and the disincarnate on a very private, dark, quiet level. In that room, I'll be dealing with people who are experiencing exorcism and possession of all kinds, dealing with them at the exorcism level, if that is what they require, or at the level of helping them understand the demons that are with them and how to work with them. That room will be specifically used for summoning, evoking, utilizing the energy of demons, getting to know one's attending demons. It'll be just that. It'll be a dark, dark space with just enough light and visibility and usability in that space to bring these things in the safest way that one can encounter chaotic energy. So when the studio is open on July 17th, that will be one of the opportunities that people have, is to come here and spend time with me and learn how to walk through summoning and evoking demons. And this is a huge thing because a lot of people write about it, and this is always my issue with writers. A lot of people write about it, but can you go and sit with them and learn to do it? And what we are going to be doing in the space is having a particular room simply for that, and I don't know where else you could find something like that. I'm very proud of it, so I'm speaking about it in that way. So it is called the Black Room, and in that room we will be doing demon works and works of intense necromancy. So I just wanted to mention that on this show about demons before we go out. Victor, thank you very much for taking the time to pull over to the side of the road and dedicate an hour to us tonight. You're a gracious, gracious man, and I'm grateful for your time.
And I'm grateful to participate with you and Chris and Mary. This is just such a wonderful experience for me, too.
Great, thank you. We hope you'll be with us next week. Can I get you to say that on the air?
I'm actually going to be in San Francisco next week, but I'm going to make an effort to be with you.
All right, they have phones there. I love having you on the air, Victor, and I'm not going to pretend I don't, so I'm going to be extremely straightforward about it. Chris, thank you tonight for your stories. Thank you for sharing that particular story with us. I know it's a personal one, and you've helped a lot of people tonight just by talking about that. Mary, I'm going to have to head out and get ready for a class. It's an hour from now. Do you want to take us out?
Sure. Thanks, everyone, for joining us for this week's edition of the Dark Matters radio show with the Sorceress Cagliastro. To reach the Sorceress, you can find her at cagliastrotheironring.com. Chris Rogostrowski can be reached at his email address at hellsrogue, HELSrogue, @gmail.com. Me, Shotgun Mary, the producer, can be reached at theshotgunmary@gmail.com. And you can reach Victor Furman at his fan page on Facebook, Victor the Voice Furman. Please follow us on Facebook at the Dark Matters Radio Show with the Sorceress Cagliastro page. And join us again next week where our topic will be communicating with the disincarnate. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Mary. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone, and thank you.